Professor, what are your views on solipsism and the role of consciousness, observer, in creating reality? Is this similar to the problem of anything goes?
No. Our particular way of observing reality is a concrete phenomenon in the actual world. It's not anything goes. Take the moon illusion again. My conscious experience can't get over it, can't overcome it, is that the moon is big at the horizon. With all you might know, the greatest astronomer in the world will still see that. That's our conscious experience. Well, is it creating reality? No. Reality is not that the moon is bigger. You can discover that in other ways. So therefore, nobody believes that the moon is bigger, even though that's all that we see and there's no explanation for it. Still don't believe it because there's so much counter evidence. So you don't create reality that way. Now, there's a sense in which our immediate experience creates reality. It's the kind of issue that's raised by, in a very interesting way, by Nelson Goodman, particularly an outstanding philosopher, in his work on what he calls star making. So he begins by asking the question, take a look at the constellation, say Orion. Is the constellation a thing in the world? Or is it a construction of our mind? What he calls a version of the world. It's a construction of our mind, it's a version. Then he goes on to say, well, what about the stars that constitute Orion? Are they things in the world? Or are they just a version? He concludes they're a version. We could talk about what we talk about stars. We could talk about in other ways, like concentrations of energy and the general flux of energy in the universe and so on. And then he goes on to say, well, is there anything that isn't just a version? Is there any reason to ask what do we gain by postulating a reality behind the versions? And goes interesting discussions. There's a book on this with his introduction commentary by a number of other philosophers, Hilary Putnam, Israel Scheffler, others, I think Carl Hampel. Those are interesting questions. I can't give a simple answer to them. But there is some kind of sense in which our immediate perceptions are the basis for developing our notion of reality. Actually, Russell talked about this about a century ago, when he was saying that if you think about, he says, our highest level of confidence is in our immediate sensory, our immediate consciousness. That's our highest level of confidence. And then most of the rest of what we do in inquiry is trying to find an explanation for it. Part of the explanation we find is that our consciousness misleads us. It tells us things that aren't true about them. That's one of the things we discover when we try to find an explanation for the consciousness, which is the thing we have highest confidence in. I think he's basically on the right track.
There's an increasing number of claims that the approach to universal grammar doesn't hold up to Bayesian modeling. Is universal grammar still the proper way to view human language usage?
Universal grammar is the proper way by definition. Universal grammar is defined as the correct theory, whatever it is, of the innate language faculty. So it can't be wrong because it's true by definition. We don't know what it is. We can try to find it, but whatever it is, whatever the true theory is of the innate language faculty, that's universal grammar by definition in the modern usage of the term. Bayesian modeling doesn't address this question. Bayesian modeling is concerned with how beliefs, theories are acquired. That's a different question. I don't think it's particularly helpful, but that's a different question altogether. So it's kind of asking, how do we acquire the theory of universal grammar? I don't think that's the way it happens. I think it's normal evolutionary processes.
In what ways do you think AGI should be implemented, and in what ways does its implementation scare you?
Well, there's no implementation that can scare me because there's no theory. There's nothing there. I mean, AGI is a goal of the early pioneers of artificial intelligence. People I knew, in fact, you go back to the 1950s, people like Herbert Simon, Al Newell, early Marvin Minsky, were concerned with trying to see if you could use what they called AI to understand the nature of intelligence, of learning, of thinking, and so on. It's basically part of cognitive science, asking, can we use the computational devices and theories that were coming into existence at the time as ways of approaching scientific questions? Now, that would be AGI, but that's been pretty much abandoned. In fact, it's sometimes ridiculed as good old-fashioned AI or something. Now we do different things, basically engineering projects which don't ask these questions.
If you enjoyed this TOE clipping, then the full video is linked in the description. You should also sign up for TOE Mail, which is again in the description and the pinned comment. You'll receive immediate access to all exclusive updates from the Theories of Everything podcast. It also helps me communicate directly with the core TOE community. You'll also receive my top 10 TOEs. Think of it as the intellectual version of Quentin Tarantino's Obsession.